Last time we learned the story of a man by the name of Shimon Ben Shetach. Today we're going to learn about the man by the name of Shimon Ben Shetach, which is actually a colleague and person that knew Shimon Ben Shetach. He came a little bit after him. But Shimon Ben Shetach was in charge of the Sanhedrin in the land of Eretz Yisrael. And this story, you might know, it's a very famous story, but we're still going to go through it. Many years ago, in that land, there was a time where the Jews had a big problem, and many of the Jewish people there started to not do Torah and mitzvot. Why? Because for a certain time there was a king, his name was Yanai. We spoke about him in a different story. And this king Yanai, what did he do? He killed off the Talmidei Chachamim, and he gave the leadership of the land of Israel to very, very bad people. These people, they were called the Tzedokim, or Tzedokim. Now the problem is like this. These Tzedokim, these people, they allowed anything to go. They said, oh, a person wants to do avodah zarah, a person wants to pick his nose, a person wants to lick his toes, a person wants to steal or do this or do that. They didn't really care. They didn't mind if the law got broken. They didn't mind if people were not keeping Torah. What's the problem? The problem is when Shimon Ben Shetach comes back, he gets rid of all these evil men. That's not a problem. That's a good thing, right? There's an itsy-bitsy problem. The itsy-bitsy problem is that many of the people in the land of Eretz Yisrael were still copying the ways they were earlier, before Shimon Ben Shetach came back, and before Shimon Ben Shetach came back. And the Queen Shulamit, some people say her name was Shulamit or Shlomit Alexandrite, different names for her. We're going to go with Shlomit Alexandrite. This queen said to the Talmidei Chachamim, specifically to Shimon Ben Shetach, you're allowed to go to fix all the problems in Eretz Yisrael. I give you control of the Sanhedrin. I give you control of the land of Eretz Yisrael. Go and make sure that people are keeping Torah and mitzvot and doing the right thing. Shimon Ben Shetach comes to a town, and he hears that in this town there's a whole bunch of witches. Now in Torah, boys, witches are not allowed. Yes, if you watch a movie or a TV show or other stuff, you see witches are this, witches are that, blah, 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 blah. In reality, what were witches actually? In Torah, when we learn about them, witches were not a good thing. Number one, they were part of avodah zarah many times. Number two, when witches did their witchcraft, which was usually incantations, like saying, Uju baja buju du, I make a curse on you. Stuff like that. When they would do those things, what would happen is they would be taking energy from tuma, from disgusting places. It's like, imagine a person went and tried to get food from the back of an animal, from a dead animal. That'd be gross. It's disgusting, right? That's what these people were doing. They were taking energy from evil places, from bad places. So Shimon Ben Shetach comes and he hears there is 80 witches, 80 different women in this place. Now, why was it only women? Back then, and even in Torah, it seems like usually the only people that did witchcraft were usually witches. Sometimes it was rare for men to do it, but usually it was just witches. Usually it was usually girls that did it, or ladies, or mommies. Well, not mommies, but ladies. And what happens is Shimon Ben Shetach hears that a whole bunch of these witches are in a certain town, and every night these witches go out of town, they leave the town, and they go and they do Uju Baja Buju Du, I put a curse on you. And they make all these incantations on people, which is bad. They make all these curses, they curse people, just like Bilam did. Bilam used to do that, as we learned in Parsha time. So Shimon Ben Shetach comes to the town, and he comes to there's a yeshiva in town. And the yeshiva there in town, he sits and he learns. And he's learning every single day. And every day he hears the same thing. People are going up into the mountains, girls and ladies, and they're doing incantations. They're doing witchcraft. Now, boys and girls, the halacha is that anybody that does witchcraft, al pi Torah, is to be excommunicated. It is to be executed. That means, unfortunately, we don't let the person live anymore. We kill the person. So Shimon Ben Shetach says, he goes to the center of town, he tells everybody, no more witchcraft. Witchcraft is asur, you're not allowed to do it. And he warns the people of the town to stop doing it. He tells the ladies in the town, you're not allowed to do witchcraft. It's asur. Do not do it. And the ladies don't listen. Every night he still hears people are going out of town in the middle of the night and doing witchcraft. And Shimon Ben Shetach is getting very upset. He says, I warned them not to do it. So he goes again and he tells them again. And again, they don't listen. They go again the next night, and the next night, and the next night. And every night they go and they do it. And Shimon Ben Shetach is getting very, very upset. So Shimon Ben Shetach says, I'm warning you that if you don't listen, there will be consequences. What's the consequence? They're going to get killed. Shimon Ben Shetach goes And he warns them, and lo and behold, they do it again. So finally, Shimon Ben Shetach says, okay, enough is enough. I'm going to take care of this now myself. And Shimon Ben Shetach waited. Now, in the land of Israel, it doesn't rain so often. Well, sometimes it does, but it doesn't rain often. But this night, it rained like crazy. But before it rained, Shimon Ben Shetach told his students, look, it's cloudy outside. I need you all to get a pan or a pot. Not a pan, but a pot. You know, like you cook cholent in. You put the cholent in the pot. So get a pot and get a fresh pair of clothing, a shirt, undershirt, underpants, so on and so forth, a kippah, tzitzit, and I want you to put them into the pan. And they say, what? Why would our Rebbe want us to do this? And he says, do what I say. And they said, okay, Rebbe. So they get a pot and they bring it to the yeshiva, and in the pot they put their fresh clothing. And Shimon Ben Shetach tells them, make sure that you're ready for when it rains. I'm going to need all of your help. And they say, yes, Rebbe, we are ready. We will do what you say. And so they waited and waited and waited until finally, one night, it started to pour! So much rain! Buckets and buckets and buckets and buckets of rain from the heavens. And Shimon Ben Shetach turned to his students and he says, everybody, you, we're going to go. They said, okay, we're going to go. Where are we going? I don't know. Rebbe said we're going. And Shimon Ben Shetach told them all, follow me. And before they left, he said, I want you to get something very important. Take your pot with your clothing and put the pot on your head like a bucket hat. They said, Rebbe, are you sure? He says, yes. Make sure to do this and make sure that the clothing inside doesn't get wet. And so they started to march. Hop, 2, 3, 4. Hop, 2, 3, 4. And they're marching with the pot on their head, and their clothing is inside the pot. And they're wearing their wet clothing because obviously they're walking in the rain and they're getting soaked. And they're going hop, 2, 3, 4. And they go all the way up the mountain. And they come to the top of the mountain. And when they get there, Shimon Ben Shetach says this cave holds a lot of witches in it. The witches go to this cave every night. And tonight they're there as well. When we get to the cave, we're going to change out of our clothing by the entrance, and then we're going to go deeper into the cave, where the witches are actually staying. And he told his students, when I give you the signal, I want you to go to the closest one witch that's next to you, and I want you to pick her up and lift her up in the air. Make sure that she can't touch the ground. She's not allowed to touch the ground with her feet or with her hands or anything. You have to lift her up. And all of the Talmidim say, but Rebbe, why should we do that? And he says, because witches cannot make a spell without touching the floor. They have to be touching earth. If they're not touching the ground, their spells don't work. And he says, I don't want them to put a spell on anybody. So I want you to pick them up and make sure they're not touching the ground. And all the students said, okay, Rebbe, whatever you say. And so they got there and they took off their clothing because it was soaking wet. And they put on the dry clothing. So the clothing wasn't wet. And they do it as quietly as possible. And they come closer and closer into the cave. And when they finally get closer and closer into the cave, what do? They go ahead and they see 80 witches are standing there. And Shimon Ben Shetach says to the witches, hello, witches! And they all turn to him and say, who's this man? Who is he? I don't know who he is. He looks funny. You see, Shimon Ben Shetach put on different clothing. He didn't make himself look like he was the rabbi Shimon Ben Shetach. So, Shimon Ben Shetach says, who am I? Who am I? I am a wizard. They say, he's a wizard? He does have a long white beard. I guess he's got a funny hat. Maybe he's a wizard. Prove it to us. How can you prove to us that you're a wizard? And Shimon Ben Shetach says, my proof that I'm a wizard is I did a spell. And they said, really? You could do magic like we could? What did you do? And he says, I walked through rain. They said, what? You walk through rain? That's impossible. Even we can't do that, and we're witches. And he says, go look outside, see what the weather's like. And all the witches looked outside. They came to the front of the cave. They poked their heads out and they said, oh, it's really raining like crazy. And they looked around and they saw all of the men are perfectly dry. Their clothing is dry. Now, they didn't know that they changed their clothing. But they didn't know that. That was a trick. And Shimon Ben Shetach says to all of his men, "Are we wizards?" And they all said, "Yes, we are wizards. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Abracadabra, ooh." And Shimon Ben Shetach went, and what did he do? He told the ladies, "Will you let us come and have a party?" And they said, "Well, you guys have some really cool magic you could do. We want to learn this magic from you. So we'll let you have a party." And they made a party. We'll continue the story, Merit Hashem, tomorrow.